It's Memorial Day. It's time to get out of town and get on the water. This summer, gear up for the fish, the food, and the family. Cabela's Memorial Day sale. Family events, amazing deals. Your one stop before the campfire. Save $200 on Champion Patriot generators. $100 on select kayaks. And get Cabela's Adult and Youth Deluxe Flotation Vests for just $9.99. Plus, come in and celebrate our Hometown Heroes event. See store for details. Shop in-store and online at Cabela's.com.
Thank you for joining Monster X Radio. Excuse you, Gunnar.
Good afternoon, Monster X Radio listeners. This is Gunnar Monson, along with Shane Corson. We'll welcome y'all to listening to Monster X Radio this afternoon. And I want to take a second to say Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there, and to my mom in particular. And thanks, everybody, for taking time out of your Mother's Day to join us here. With me today is Mr. Shane Corson. Shane, how are you?
Hey, Gunnar, how you doing? I'm doing well.
I'm doing great. We've had a lot of rain this week and some crazy weather. We even had thunder and lightning on the Oregon coast, which doesn't happen that often at all. But we had it a couple different times this week. It was weird. So and it rained at times in buckets. But right now the sun is trying to poke out. So I'm actually over at Susan's mom's house for Mother's Day. So. In that we're in St. Helens, Oregon, so it's been a good day.
Excellent. Yeah, I spent the day with the wifey, whatnot, and getting caught up on a little bit of online research, getting some things that we've been working on.
Are you still there?
I am. I'm sorry. Here's some background feed, something. But yeah. Anyways, been working on some projects. This past the Olympic project just had their public expedition last week, and yeah, Gunnar's still hearing that. I'm not sure what it is. Anyways, the public expedition last weekend, it was a great success. We had Dr. Jeff Meldrum in the house giving a presentation on the Patterson-Gimlin film that was thoroughly enjoyed by all, including myself. Cindy Cadell gave a presentation on the on Sasquatch and the possible human connection, and just gave a lowdown on primates in general, which was fascinating by itself. So kudos to her, great presentation. And Cindy Cadell is also a member of the Olympic Project. So overall, the project, the expedition, was fantastic. We had about 20 individuals that from all around the country arrive, and I know they had a great time. And they took something away from this particular expedition. They got a lot of time with Dr. Meldrum, who was gracious in his joining of the Olympic Project. But he had motives for attending this particular expedition. And one of those was, basically...
that's exciting stuff.
It is. It really is exciting. He came along to give a a presentation and mingle with the attendees. But that was the Thursday through the Sunday. And Sunday, we headed to a new location and got boots on the ground come Monday morning in our nesting area. The purpose of Dr. Meldrum heading out with us to the nesting area was to obtain samples so they could be tested. So he got to witness the bedding areas. And if you're not familiar, pardon me, with these nests, we've talked about them previously on the show. Something the Olympic Project has been working on for the past 2 years, studying them and documenting them. They weren't discovered by the Olympic Project, but we were led to them by an outside source. And pardon me. And anyway, so we've been studying these nests because they don't seem to match any known type of animal. We've had biologists look at them and other scientists and those familiar with the area and what animals are capable of doing, and these just don't fit in within that parameter. And so they're very fascinating. All made out of huckleberry.
Well, they don't match any known animal in the Pacific Northwest, but they do
Definitely
closely
not.
match an animal found in Africa, which is
the gorilla. Correct. Yes. Yeah. So,
right.
Yeah. Both in there's just the comparison to gorilla nests is extraordinary in how closely they resemble gorilla nests, including the makeup. There's to this date, I believe we found 21 nests, and the original find did have scat and feces around them, so it was very similar to gorilla nests in that aspect as well. So we finally got Dr. Meldrum to join us after the expedition. He came out, and we got multiple samples. We got multiple hair samples. We got sedimentary soil samples, which he obtained. We even took pie-shaped cuts out of the nests for testing and analysis, so that he took along with him. So from what I told, they won't be looking at them for at least a month. The individual that's going to be doing the sampling for us is busy for at least a month. So, pardon me, the results or preliminary results, we won't get anything back probably for a couple months, probably towards the end of the summer. But I'm still excited that finally we got Dr. Meldrum out. Someone that's highly respected in the Bigfoot world and is a scientist. And he works with other scientists. So this is exciting for us. It's not just and we are amateurs, myself and our group, Olympic Project, obviously. But it's nice to get science involved and get this really looked at a little more seriously.
Well, one of the things that I have said is it's been 2 years that this has been an ongoing project, and to me that's the approach that the Olympic Project has taken with this find is the right way to go about it. I mean, I've seen other occasions where stuff comes out and it's automatically labeled, hey, we found, this is Bigfoot or that Bigfoot, and there's been some interesting finds with this discovery. A couple of rocks were found that looked that were scored on the sites that were on the ground by a nest that sits out on the point of the ridge. So it looks like something possibly where it'd be a great vantage point, and just the way that the location has been described. Can you describe how difficult? I mean, what the ingress and egress? Is this such an ideal location for these nests?
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Meldrum was impressed. I'll tell you this. I'm impressed with Dr. Meldrum. We know him as a TV guy and a guy that is in, being a professor, is in the classroom, in the lab.
Sure. The lab.
That guy is a heck of a hiker. This is not an easy place to get to by no means. It's very rugged, and Meldrum handled it very well. I was impressed. I hike a lot. I do a lot of hiking, and so does Derek and James Millen and some of the other guys. We do a lot of hiking, so it's not extremely difficult for us. But I was impressed with Dr. Meldrum, handling this terrain. So kudos to him. But yeah, this area, extremely rugged. It's very thick. It's steep in parts. You have Devil's Club, which is a very nasty plant. You have, Soul Owl, obviously, which can be thick and hard to get through, especially when it's knee-high and above. And then the huckleberry. You got the huckleberry that is where these nests are built in between. But you're on a finger ridge, and you're overlooking a creek or a river that gets a lot of salmon certain times of the year. In this area with the huckleberry, you get tons of huckleberry. So the food sources are ridiculous certain times of the year. But the things that stand out in my head, why this area...
I'm not... There you go. I lost you for a second there.
Oh. But I was going to say, strategically speaking, this area is phenomenal because you're sitting on top of a finger coming off the mountain on a ridge. So coming off from the mountain down, you can't sneak into this area. There's times when you're falling over, you're crawling, you're stumbling. It's sick. It's just really a pain in the butt to get to. And then the escape routes, when you get up into this, are perfect. I mean, if I was somebody trying to hide or whatnot, you got multiple escape routes going down towards the creek. For a human, it'd be difficult, but I would imagine a Sasquatch fairly simple, or any other animal. So it's it's just a perfect spot, strategically speaking. It's very military-like in my head, the way the nests are positioned. You have those two rocks you mentioned earlier that were at the point nest. I thought that, they had score marks on them. And they were only the only two loose rocks in that area, and they're, softball size, basically. They're a little bit smaller than softballs, but perfect for smacking together, and you can hear across the other ridge. And this is all, hypothetically speaking. I didn't see a Sasquatch pick up these rocks. I didn't see a Sasquatch make these nests. What I've been looking at for 2 years is if this is Sasquatch related, why and how. And right now it's not explainable, at least as a known animal. But like you mentioned earlier, they do look very similar to gorilla nests, and they're not weaved. The nests aren't weaved, but they are constructed. One of the things that Dr. Meldrum noticed that I had not noticed was that some of the huckleberry sticks were placed at an angle. So they were pushed in to the soil. And then of course the huckleberry was wrapped around it, so to speak. Not weave, but it was something intelligent. This was an intelligently put together nest.
Yeah, intelligent design. I mean, it's not just. It's obviously not something that happened randomly. I mean, there's a lot of story about quote stick structures, or occasionally people find above ground. Could be a structure, could be something that happened, could be man-made for all. These are not in a location that. I mean, the probability of these nests being something that or man-made is very low, just given the location and the remoteness of. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. It's one thing you can never rule out, but in my head, I've already ruled it out. In my head, I can say 100% these are not man-made. The size of some of them, you got some larger ones and you have some smaller ones. What you look like you have there is a family unit. I mean, whatever was there probably had some sort of family unit. And some of that huckleberry, let me tell you, some of that huckleberry is 1 inch to 2 inch thick. I can't snap it. And that's marks on this
that's
stuff.
One of the keys. Yeah, one of the key elements of that is how Derek handles one of the heads of the element described the conditions on that. Just basically, the entire ridge has all this huckleberry, and it's snapped off. I mean, as you could see, basically, and that it was not something that like you're describing, inch to 2 inches. That stuff is not that easy to break. And in fact, I'd be hard pressed to break any of that 2-inch thick stuff. Forget about it.
Forget about it. I mean, and there's other limbs, other trees in this area that were snapped, weren't necessarily used for in the construction of the nest, but were snapped that were significantly larger than that. Like I said, no teeth marks, snapped, and made to and brought back. And some cases just right around the nest, snapped off, made right there. In other spots, where it was snapped off and brought to the nest. So there was what bears do. There are bear beds in this area, not on this ridge, but there are bear beds or bedding areas we have discovered out there. Deer beds. I mean, what deer usually, they'll bed down. Bear will a lot of times, use a tree. They'll go up a tree and rake the bark off and make a bed that way. But they'll rake it off. You'll see claw marks. You'll see bits of trunks on the ground, and they'll sometimes pull stuff in around them. This is not bear behavior. It doesn't even resemble a bear bed. It resembles a gorilla nest. And so, and then, I rule out human for a multitude of reasons based on the multiple ridges in the nest, the sizes, the construction, the time of year they were built, so humans, and specifically in this area, no, but something smart built these. These were intelligently built and profound in many ways, so much so that when you hear Dr. Meldrum go, "Oh my gosh," that's coming from a scientist that's impressed, and he even mentioned that it resembled a gorilla nest. All the pictures and stuff that he's seen and studied, it resembled that. So he was taken back. At one point, he even mentioned it was a little bit too much to take in, especially when we got to one of the areas where there's multiple nests, and you're looking around at the decimation of the huckleberry, which is growing back. So it's not as easy to find now. But the huckleberry is starting to grow back, which brings up all sorts of questions. Some of the things we were talking about on the field, was is this an area where they periodically come back, or these weren't built for a one-night stay, in my opinion. Not which is contrary to gorillas. Gorillas will make a nest and use it one time and take off, and that's it. These were constructed, I think, for a longer period of stay, a longer period of time there, and I think that has to do with the salmon run and the huckleberry. Could be way wrong, but these were just to build them as big as they were built, and the amount of work it would have taken, didn't make sense to be a one-night thing. And if it was a one-night thing, I think we'd find these nests all the time, everywhere. I think they're just that rare. I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Well, so, I mean, one of the things is that there was the initial site that had several nests there. How many are on the initial, the ridge line there? There's, what was there, 7 or something on the?
Yeah, there's about 7.
Yeah.
There, between 5 and 7 on the original one. There's a few that they look like they're nests, but it's kind of hard to absolutely nail down. The others are very obvious. And then some of the other ridges have, anywhere from 5 to 7. And then there is one ridge that has only one. It actually, James Millian and I discovered this particular nest, and it's only the one on the ridge, and it happens to be the biggest, which, of course, brings up more questions. Why is this big one down here? And how old is it compared to the other nests? Is this some sort of setup like this is the matriarch, this is the male, or, hypothetically speaking, or was this, what's going on here? And we don't know. All we can do is guess, and for the record, I'll say this again. We're not saying these are Sasquatch beds or nests. We're looking into the possibility based on this area has had a huge amount of history to it, a huge amount of Sasquatch-related history to it, both in sightings and in findings. So there's that to go off of. There has been, in the general area, there has been tracks found. There has been sightings, vocals, and so given the nature of the area and everything else, we are looking into the possibility right? Right now we don't know what made them, even though we've had hairs looked at and they come back, they don't match any known animal, so that we got that going for us as well. The construction, the rocks I find really interesting, just the rocks and the score marks on them and the positioning of them. That to me is fascinating. I've always thought Sasquatch, used rocks or had the possibility of rock planting, and I think a lot of the reported tree knots are just rocks on a tree. I really do. I also think they're Sasquatch using his hands and his body on itself, but definitely the rocks are compelling and make a lot of sense to me. Don't you think so, Gunnar?
Well, the way that it's described is, and I've seen a map laid out of how the nests were placed. It sits out like on the best observation point. It looks like, and what you talk about. There's a lot of reports of what people describe as like planting, and I agree. I don't see Bigfoot walking around with a stick, necessarily banging on trees. That's in fact, there was someone I was talking to, and they described they went out and this, if you're into Bigfoot research, or even if you're like the Bigfoot enthusiast, you want to hear what a tree knocks, quote unquote, sounds like. Go out and test it and record it and see what go out and hit a tree with a piece of wood. I've done it enough times that most of even the limbs that I find that are sizable enough to make a big noise, it doesn't make the same sound as what people describe as neat tree knocks. And I've heard something like that in our research area out by Tillamook. But when I hit a branch against a tree, it shatters basically, and there's a lot more. It doesn't sound the same as a tree knock, which has this weird kind of pop sound to it. And we don't know. We talk about, well, here's a 7, 8, 9, 10 foot animal out there that imagine what the noise that they can make with their body, just the proportion of how huge their hands are, what their vocal cavity, what their volume for what they can or that they can hold in their lungs, what they can do with their mouths. I mean, we don't know. It's all speculation. But this area at the very least, something unique has been found that can't be attributed to known animal behavior at this point. So I'm interested. So are we not at liberty at this time to talk about who's doing the DNA testing? We'll probably talk about that in a later show. I just would hate to throw names out there and have this person contacted, and they haven't even received samples yet, so they're probably in transit. Right. Probably not a good idea right now, but down the road for sure, it's not going to be a big secret. So, the only reason we're discussing this today, actually, I was hoping to talk about this on a future show, but our guest has not appeared, so I decided to take the show in this direction. It happens from time to time, yeah.
It does, but I wanted to, this was going to be for a future show, but I thought, coming right off being out there and with Dr. Meldrum, I thought what a perfect opportunity to discuss this. I know there are a lot of people interested in this particular study, what the Olympic Project's working on. So, but I did want to go back to the rock thing real quick, because those rocks, they do have score marks on them, and so they something had at one point smacked those rocks together. They were on the one side, and I always after my encounter in 2011, years later, I was really thinking about the what I called wood knocks, what transpired the 2 nights in a row. Were so loud and so powerful that you felt them in your tent. Now, there's something for me was definitely hitting a tree. This wasn't mechanical. This wasn't coming from the body. This was something hitting a tree. Well, on the second night after the really powerful wood knock sounds, we had a rock come in the camp, and I never really thought about it till years later. Well, after those knocks came the rock. Well, did it whatever was hitting this tree, and there could have been more than one of them, but whatever was hitting the tree, it makes sense that I didn't hear limbs breaking off, because it would have, as hard as this thing was smacking the tree. If it wasn't the rock hitting the tree, then I would have assumed it was, maybe it's palm or its hand. I did an experiment recently, and it hurt my hand, but you'd be surprised at the sound you can make with your palm hitting a tree. It's pretty impressive, actually. But the rock thing, I definitely think it was using a rock to hit the tree and then threw the rock into camp. So the limb thing, not that it's not a possibility and may happen, but it just makes more sense for the sounds to come from either the body of a Sasquatch or from a rock on a tree or a rock on a rock rather than a limb. Because in the Mountain National Forest, I know this because I tried starting a fire out there. Almost all the limbs on the ground are wet and nasty and soggy, and you'd have to break off a fresh limb. And to hit a tree that loud and that powerful, it's going to be pretty hard to do to find that perfect limb every time, and eventually you're going to break it. So rock just makes more sense.
And the tree knocks that I heard had like a pop, and when and I'll use what they do on Fighting Bigfoot. They use bats. I mean, these are treated wood, super hard that make that kind of sound on a tree. It's not a limb that you find in the forest that's covered with bark and it just. I think your idea that a lot of times that's a rock hitting a tree, and really it's just what kind of behavior. And these rocks that were found there, scored in, and all. To me, I always say the all evidence requires context, and a lot of what you're describing is has an area that has is easy or to defend, and nobody. I've heard you would not be able to get in there without something into that nesting area from the outside without whatever, if something was in there, being alerted to presence. So it's a really defensible position. And
perfect example of that real quick is we were out there last weekend or last Monday, and pretty sure we had a bear below us. I heard a bark, and you heard something take off. It sounded like a bear, so pretty sure we had a bear below us. Heard it, couldn't sneak up on. That was from below us. We also, while we were studying, taking samples, we did have something large approaching. Meldrum went to view another nest just maybe 20 feet away from us, maybe 15, 20 feet away from us. And Derek Randall and James Miller and I were looking at another nest. We're searching for hares. And James was alerted to something approaching us. And Derek heard it, and then I heard it. And it was big. Whatever it was approaching us. And it was being fairly stealthy, but you could still hear it. Whatever was trying to sneak in on us from the top was even as stealthy as it was trying to be, we still heard it coming. Never put eyes on it. I don't think even knew wherever it was, didn't even know we were there. They heard Meldrum. Meldrum was being rather loud when he was walking through the huckleberry. You could hear him snap and stuff. And where it was could not sneak up on us. And once we made ourselves known, whatever it was took off. Never laid eyes on it. Had no idea what it was. Probably a bear. Or an elk or something like that. Sorry, not an elk, a deer. But anyways, So I mean, nothing. It's nearly impossible to sneak up in this area, and I think that's exactly why these nests or beds are in this area, is because it's very defensible, and you got multiple escape routes, and you will be alerted. The tree cover. People have said, "Hey, can you get a drone in there?" Nope, not going to happen. It's just too thick. You can't fly a drone in there. There is a tree nest we've yet to look into yet. It's going to be hard, it's hard to get to. You can't get a drone in there to even look at it, and we're going to have to climb it. But this area you can't get a drone in. It's just too thick. We contemplated that idea. It's just not going to happen. But like I said, very defensible. You can hide very easily in this area. You can disappear real quick. If something's coming down, you can dive off the face of this thing and be gone in no time flat. You're not going to be found.
Well, one of the interesting things is subsequent to the initial nesting site being found is that more nests have been this and not, I mean, in fairly close proximity to this original nesting site. So it's not an isolated incident. And I've heard other stories of nest-like structures being found. We had a guest a while back that talked about finding a nest in association with a Bigfoot sighting in the same vicinity. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, down in southern, northern California.
Right. So
yeah,
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, and I believe Cindy Dosen found a nest one time.
She did on
correctly.
Vancouver Island. In the book, and I mentioned this before in the show, Rainforest Sasquatch, and there's a picture in there of a nest that was discovered in Alaska. It's very similar to what we're looking at. But if you want the closest image of what these nests look like, just go look up gorilla nests. It is very similar.
Well,
to
that. That's what happened is that Derek initially, he and James Millian went to the site with some other folks that knew about it, and he went home and started looking for something that matched that, and that's what he found that was matched it the most closely, and it matches it very closely. So it's weird. Do we have, I mean, it just, and still, even given the context of this evidence, the thing you have to respect about the approach of the Olympic Project is they are not going out and shouting, oh, we found Bigfoot's, whatever, Bigfoot's birthing area or Bigfoot's, bedroom. It's just a nice, refreshing approach. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice, refreshing. It's a scientific project, and now, a few weeks ago, we had Todd Disotell, the scientist from New York University, that was talking about the new kind of DNA technology that exists, and that's exciting. I mean, that's pretty exciting. Where it's a lot easier to, I refer to it as sifting, that you can take soil samples and basically sift them for the different entities, the creatures or whatever that were in that soil sample. And that could be huge for Bigfoot research.
Well, it not only could it be huge, but it's a must, because what else are we looking at right now? I mean, you can look at hair, and you can get, you can pull certain things out of that, it's unknown, it matches primate, blah, blah. But to find primate, I mean, the way that soil sample works, it could be years and years and years and years later, and you can still figure out everything that had been in that spot.
Meldrum like millions of years. Yeah, like millions of years.
Well, they've done that. Yeah. I mean, that's a recent article that was just published, and Dr. Meldrum and I discussed that. He made a little joke, but he's quite serious. He's like, humans and animals, when we're walking around, we're giving off, we're like one giant flake. We're giving off hair samples and skin samples everywhere. He's like, whatever's been here, we'll be able to look at and figure out what's been there. And yes, we'll be able to determine if it's human or not. Because obviously we've been in some of these areas. We did test nests that no one had really been around to try and minimize the amount of corruption that could be there present. So, but the truly amazing direction that science is taking in the soil sampling and being able to figure out, well, raccoons can hear a bear. I mean, they can do that, and it's amazing. And it's that's where I see Bigfoot research going. I mean, that's where we're going now with it. We're excited to have academia on board with this. Looking at it, it's by no means a cheap process. It's very expensive, and so it's we're really eager to see what is found from these samples. See what the future holds with this. But this is where the Bigfoot research is going, in my opinion. We don't have a body and we don't have bones. Well, what's the next best thing? Is samples from a possible Sasquatch nest. And we'll get results. Hopefully the results are in our favor.
Well, and what what could be interesting at some point is that I mean, because as I understand it, just like any other DNA sample, you're going to come out with, an unknown, and you can be an unknown, and then another category could be unknown primate or unknown canine or whatever you would get out of these samples. But if you collect enough samples if they come back with the same DNA signature from different locations where eventually you may not know exactly what the animal is, but science then can't ignore the fact that there's another unknown primate, say, that's what it come back at. And now you test the Olympic project, this area, the nesting site, and then somebody has another possible Bigfoot area. And one of the things that I asked Dr. Disito when he was on the show was say if somebody saw Bigfoot and they know it was a Bigfoot and they saw it leave a footprint, that's I guess his response was you couldn't get enough DNA necessarily out of a single footprint. You'd need an area that would have been frequented more than that to get sufficient amount of DNA. I mean, you're building a database that all of a sudden you're going to have these. If you do it enough, you're going to have. You're going to come out with known animals. You're going to come out with bear, possum, raccoon, turkey, elk and deer, and whatever else, fox, and then you're going to have this other animal, biological entity in the record, and now you have a scientific documentation of something else. So if it matches, unknown primate, then after a while you're gonna have to answer the question. Okay, what we now know it is. We know that there is something. They could, it doesn't necessarily, I guess, identify it as Bigfoot. But now you have a question of, okay, what is leaving DNA samples all over the forest in areas where people associate with Bigfoot or Bigfoot activity? So, I mean, that to me is, you get one sample, then two, then all of a sudden you have 20. Because one of the things when I thought that if anybody had access to existing, because I've heard, there are DNA samples out there that come back as unknown primate. And I thought if anybody had access to those, it would have been Dr. Disito. And he said he's never seen one of something that is unknown primate. So if somebody has those right now, where they are, the database is scattered. There's no place that seems to have them central. But I'm excited about this new technology that allows you to possibly identify an unknown primate that, after a while you get enough matching ones. You got something to take to science and say, hey, we got 100 samples of the same genome, basically.
Yeah. And this if anybody's looking for instant gratification out of this, it's not going to happen. This is going to be, whatever comes of it. I mean, it will be written up. If anything substantial is found from these samples, it'll be passed on to other scientists and their expertise. This will be, peer reviewed and everything else. I'm kind of putting the cart before the horse here, but just saying it's not going to be. You're not going to see. Bigfoot is real on Facebook or a big YouTube thing, but it's not going to happen. It's not how we work. It's not how it should be done. It needs to be thoroughly looked at by multiple people, and you never know. You may not find anything, when they're done looking at it. I mean, we may not have anything from it. I expect to have something unique found. I personally do, and I could be wrong. But I'm fairly optimistic that we've got really good samples and that something unique will be found from them. But, once again, I don't know, and I can't say that for sure. But it is exciting, and hopefully we can replicate this because, like you were just mentioning, Gunnar, multiple samples would be fantastic. What we'd like to do is find some more nests of like the ones we discovered or were led to somewhere else. And we've got sites in mind right now that we are going to be actively looking at this year, given we have a few patterns we think we've developed by looking at the area and the nests, and we've found a couple of locations that kind of match all the key characteristics that we think we're looking for, and we're going to search those out. I think it's important, very important. I think that you find another area that has these nests in them. There has to be more out there, I would assume, and then maybe we can get more samples. Maybe we'll find fresher ones. I don't know, but one would assume that there would have to be more nests out there. Though I do think they're rare. I just do, and I don't think that's rocket science. They need to be more found, and that's why I think, like I was talking about earlier, that's why I think these were more of a long-term thing than a one-night sort of thing. Whether we're talking days or weeks, I think more like weeks. But once again, could be wrong. But given the decimation of this area and the amount of work that went into building them, and the food sources available, you had no reason to leave. I also like to think that the possibility of this being almost like a nursery, almost like an area that'd be a great spot for something to give birth or have a little one for a few weeks. You can fill up real quick on food, lots of protein. Between the salmon and the huckleberry and all the other little berries out there, and not to mention and everything else in this area. It's a great spot. You don't have to go anywhere. You can just stock up and lay low. Great location.
So this area is being monitored by trail cam, isn't it?
A few trail cameras, and it's it is. We've gotten a lot of the known animals, but we really don't think much has been back to this area. It's either was used and
that was
and
another
it,
question.
or well, seasonally. One of the theories is that why would you come back to this area if the huckleberry is decimated? There's no huckleberry, right? There's no real point other than to conceal yourself or hide yourself. No real point to come back here unless the huckleberry's grown back. Yes, you got a salmon run seasonally. Some years it's bigger, some years it's less. But and you get steelhead and everything else. But huckleberry is growing back now, and it's growing back. Maybe it's a 3-year cycle, possibly. Maybe it's a 4-year cycle. Maybe they don't come back at all. They or it or what. But it would make sense that you'd want because as from the first time we saw the nest, they've depleted a little bit. You got tree fall, deadfall that crushes them. You got animals coming and plucking them. Things passing through there. Eventually, at some point, these nests won't be there unless they're fixed up or added to. They will disappear. They will be taken over by nature, just like the huckleberry snaps. All the snaps off places in this area, the huckleberry's grown back. So you going into this area, you almost don't even see the breaks because the huckleberry's grown back. You have to kind of look for it now. So what's going on? We are monitoring, and we'll be monitoring for several more years, and we will see. I don't think the trail cams are very well placed. I don't think they're a deterrent. We had a couple of trail cameras in a slower area, kind of a game trail area, and mama bear and a couple of cubs tortoise gnawed at them. So the only reason they saw them was because I think they heard the click, the shutter. So once that was discovered, it was chew time. We did have one trail camera, and it was probably a bear once again, not too far away from the nest, that was torn off a tree and thrown several feet from where it was at. We don't really you see a hairy arm, and I say arm, could have been a paw. You just can't make it out. It's just not great detail, but it was ripped from the tree. We don't cable lock these, and so it was ripped from the tree and tossed. We found it. This was several months ago. We did find the trail camera, and we did see something hairy on her, but it was like I said, probably a bear. So the trail cam thing, you never know what what you're going to get on there, and I think it's a useful tool to utilize. personally.
So one of my other questions, and I think you answered it already, is in the 2 years since the Olympic Project has been involved in this project, has there been any evidence of whatever Metis nests returning to the area?
Well, so we've had some very interesting vocals that have been heard in this general area, and there has been, like I said, there is reported supposed Sasquatch activity in some of the other areas in proximity to this area. There was a sighting of Derek Randall's and his wife were out in an area not too far from there, and they had seen something. What they had seen was a tree shaking back and forth, pretty substantial sized tree. And when I say shaking, Derek described it as, like a whip. Tori saw it first, the tree, and so Derek grabbed his binoculars and then didn't see anything. But it was being whipped back and forth. And as they approached, what both Tori and Derek saw was something tan in color. And that was about it, and they saw it take off, thinking bear or something, At first they didn't know what the heck was shaking this tree. Obviously it was, they eventually get up to this area, and the tree, and I've seen this tree, and I've tried to shake it. I can barely budge this thing. I can't make it whip back and forth as they described it. 3 men can't do that, and we've tried. Pardon me. What was found at the base of the tree was a flat area where something had been. Derek went, looked for it, never found it. But what the surprising thing was, when they got down there, they realized and how high this thing had to have been, or how tall this thing had to have been, because it was, I believe Derek said it was, the brush around there was about 4 feet, and this thing was a good, 4 feet above that, 3 to 4 feet roughly. And so when he stood in there, you could see Derek's head and a little bit of his shoulders. So this thing was significantly bigger. Was that a Sasquatch? I don't know, but it's one of those things where, you got other reports. There's other reports from loggers, recent reports not too far away from this area that they, there's 2 different loggers that waiting for a gate to be opened, start their day, early morning hours, that did not know each other, but both had a sighting in the same area weeks apart. So there is supposed Sasquatch sightings, and there's been some crazy vocalizations recorded and heard in person in these areas. So for building those nests, I don't know. But, you got to start looking at the whole picture here. And there's enough area, Washington's a big state, and the Olympics are huge. There's enough area in these parts that something wouldn't have to go back to this area for a long time. These areas are huge. There's there's an absolute a ton of food in these areas, and if something is going to be feeding regularly, they're going to have to move around, be a bit nomadic anyway, right? So there's no reason right now for something to come back into this area. Maybe the surrounding areas. There's like tons of ungulates and other prey food, and certain times of year. I mean, the fish and the berries are just ridiculous, and other animals take advantage of it. Excuse me. I would assume Sasquatch does too.
Humans are the only animal species that over fish or overuse the land that they need to survive on. It's part of Mother Nature is those animals have a natural instinct for survival and for preservation. Basically, they're natural conservationists. They don't decimate an area to the point that they can't use it anymore. And one of the interesting things about what we believe to be a Bigfoot out there, that there's you got to think about what their dietary needs are, and how much calories it's going to take to maintain an animal that is 7 to 10 feet tall, whatever, and massive. massive body size. That's got to take a lot of calories. So I don't know. We talk about how intelligent, what level of intelligence are we talking about with these animals, these creatures?
Mm-hmm.
And how much are they aware of the damage that the footprint that they leave in an area? And maybe if they really don't want to be found, they're aware of. We move on and let the force swallow up the evidence of our existence.
Yeah, you know what? I'll touch upon that real quick too. And I'm not saying I don't throw it out the window. Years ago I did. Someone said, to me, do you think Sasquatch covers up their tracks? And I thought, nah, they don't do that. That's silly. And then I saw a report of chimpanzees, that are hunted, and I believe it was in Uganda. I could be wrong, but that were hunted regularly. Well, they had to cross roads, because there's a lot of dirt roads, and they were seen covering up their tracks. So, do I think Sasquatch goes out of the way to cover their tracks up? I don't know, but I don't throw it out the window. I mean, it's a possibility. It's a possibility. It sounds kind of out there. I don't. Chimpanzees do it, and I think Sasquatch is a lot smarter than a chimpanzee. It's a possibility, but I do think they do go out of their way to avoid humans for the most part. Speaking of calories, if you got in there with a lot of food, and you don't have why the nest area makes a lot of sense to me, is you can pretty much lay in a nest and pluck huckleberry, go down to the creek and grab, salmon galore, and come back up and burn not many calories. So, easy there. But so I mean the intelligence factor, it's fascinating, all the little theories and ideas and hypotheses that we come up with. Obviously, not fact. We don't know. The only fact I know, the only thing I'm sure of is that Sasquatch exists. And after that, everything's really conjecture on my part, and just looking at the data as a whole, and whatnot. So I've also wanted to know too, Gunnar, was we do a lot of promotion here for Squatch Metrics. Squatch Metrics, he's on Facebook. You could look up the site. Is your go-to data source for Sasquatch-related stuff. I actually got to meet Mr. Squatch Metrics. He came up to the Olympics, up to our expedition, and I got to hang out with him and talk with him in person, collaboration. Absolute pleasure meeting him, and he's got great things coming down the pike here. Some amazing stuff is going to be data-wise. The numbers don't lie. This guy's super intelligent. It is also where Bigfoot research is going, is through this data, and he's an absolute amazing resource to have. I was very proud to meet him. I'm looking forward to he's helping out some data on the nesting area and other surrounding areas. But I highly recommend, for those listening, you can find him on Facebook. He does not have a website yet. I keep encouraging him to do so, but he's just so busy. But he does have a Facebook website. He does post, or a Facebook page he does post up to, Squatch Metrics. That if you're an enthusiast or a researcher or just interested, look at some of the stuff he puts up. It's really interesting stuff. And also with that, the Olympic Project is tossing around the idea of possibly hosting another public expedition. I believe we're tossing around the idea around July. We weren't going to do one, but we've had a lot of people approach us interested in joining the Olympic Project on expedition. And so we're tossing around the idea of July, sometime, probably mid-July. Cliff Bergman said he would join us. So if we do one of these, Cliff Bergman, the show Finding Bigfoot, and of course, a good friend of ours, fantastic researcher, will be present. And we are tossing around ideas of possibly bringing a portion of one of the, since we've already decimated one of the nests for sampling, we're tossing around the idea of bringing back a portion of it so people can view it and maybe get an idea what we've been looking at and what they could be looking for. So stay tuned for that. And we'll also do a mini presentation on some of our findings and ideas on the nest site. So we're tossing that around that idea, but we have had a lot of interest. And so we will probably do that. And Gunnar, I hope you can make it if that does come into fruition.
I'm I hope to too. It's my life is in a little bit of flux now. I've owned a grocery store for almost 19 years. It would be 19 years in August, and actually I'm selling it and will be doing the Sasquatch Coffee and Monster X basically full time. So as I transition, I'm hoping to have more free time to get out into the woods. I know that there's some areas, forest research groups area that I want to get out and check out because we've had, interesting activity that we can't easily explain. There's some areas that I'm still applying. I want to go out and try and find. Because I believe that if this is a behavior that, and let's just assume for fun that it was Bigfoot that made these nests.
Right.
That's a behavior that they do other places, and it's not an isolated incident. And you would think that these animals would have to have some place to protect their young when they were, when they're first born. Whether it be caves or nests, and one of the things that really fascinates me about the area up in Washington is that this nest, what appears to be a nest, and there's definitely a structure because James Millian actually initially saw it on their first trip there, and you've seen it, and there's definitely something up in this tree. I mean, and I know you're chomping at the bit to get up there and see what exactly it is, because it's a cool idea that maybe it's a place that they put babies or whatever. I mean, we can speculate all day. But,
once again,
it's exciting.
Once again, if you look at gorilla nests, once again, a lot of times the infant and sometimes the mother will be up in a tree nest. It's just, for us, the tree nest, it's a large platform-looking thing. It's really odd. You can't rule out eagle, but given the area it's located, it'd be very difficult for a large bird to get in and out of. It's concealed. It's not on the very top of the tree. It's down lower, so from the sky, I would imagine wouldn't be able to see this. Actually, I'm almost positive you can. But the limbs are big enough, probably not for an adult, but for a smaller size Sasquatch, I would imagine it'd be perfect and a good spot while mom and dad are down plucking salmon. That an infant or a smaller one would be safe in the tree. But once again, no idea if it's related. No idea. Here's what I know. Something made these nests. Something made them. They're intelligently put together. Would I like it to be Sasquatch? Heck yeah. But can I prove that? No, not yet. But what we do know is that these nests are undocumented, and what I mean by that is that this isn't behavior ever seen before in North America or anywhere for that matter, other than possibly gorillas nests. Something made these nests. What made them we don't know, but we do know that this even if it wasn't Sasquatch that made these nests, it'd be an amazing find because nobody knows what made them, and it's not been documented before. So that to me is amazing and really awesome to be. It's really awesome for me to be involved with this sort of research, whether it's Bigfoot or not. I mean, I hope so, but even if it's not, it's still an amazing find all into itself.
Well, folks, that's it was interesting discussion, Shane. Wasn't what we had on the table today, but that I know, like you, I can talk about Bigfoot all day, and it's fascinating what's going on with this area. I for one appreciate the approach that's being taken, that it's not an itch to scratch. It's a project. It's a longer process than that. So kudos to the Olympic Project for taking the time to do things in the right way. And for my co-host Shane Corson, I want to thank you all for listening to Monster X. If you haven't already, go to the new Monster X website, www.monsterxradio.com, and join our community. We'll be back next weekend with another brand new episode of Monster X Radio. Till then, thank you everybody for listening, and have a great week.
It's Memorial Day. It's time to get out of town and get on the water. This summer, gear up for the fish, the food, and the family. Cabela's Memorial Day sale. Family events, amazing deals. Your one stop before the campfire. Save $200 on Champion Patriot generators, $100 on select kayaks, and get Cabela's Adult and Youth Deluxe Flotation Vests for just $9.99. Plus, come in and celebrate our Hometown Heroes event. See store for details. Shop in-store and online at Cabela's.com. It's Memorial Day. It's time to get out of town and get on the water. This summer, gear up for the fish, the food, and the family. Cabela's Memorial Day sale. Family events, amazing deals. Your one stop before the campfire. Save $200 on Champion Patriot generators, $100 on select kayaks, and get Cabela's Adult and Youth Deluxe Flotation Vests for just $9.99. Plus, come in and celebrate our Hometown Heroes event. See store for details. Shop in-store and online at Cabela's.com.